The Fed basically has become now just a giant hedge fund. It's lost $1 trillion, and counting. It's going to be a gigantic loss. What it does is borrows money at 5.4% from banks and then dumps it into government bonds. So think what that trade does. That causes the government to think that it's better off than it is. And so that encouraged the government to be short when rates were zero. So why did the government borrow so much in T-bills? Well, because the Fed was buying the bonds and it made it look like yields were going to stay low for long. Remember the low for long phrase. So we've got these multiple problems that are going on, and it endangers the dollar. So that's the basic case.
Instead of the Fed having such large balances, wouldn't the private sector be starting businesses and risking capital and bringing returns and adding to growth? Wouldn't all that money be better if it wasn't with the Fed?
That's right, and we're depending on private equity. So as the banks get squeezed out, because they're lending so much to the Fed, it's literally a floating rate loan from banks to the Federal Reserve so it can buy government bonds. So if that were freed up, that would allow the banks to at least consider a small business loan, an inventory loan, the kinds of things that help the economy grow. And this is on a global basis. It's not just the Fed. It's all the major central banks doing the same thing, meaning taking money from the economy in order to buy government bonds. We need to be clear on that. I heard the previous segment, they talk about money printing. There isn't any money printing on it. It's just money borrowing, and they pay top dollar for it. The Fed pays 5.4 to banks and 5.3 to money market funds, so to the Fidelity and Vanguard and so on.
So what you have here, Dan Alder runs Murray McCain Capital. All credit to him. This is his chart, not mine. But I read it and thought this nails it. So, and his title is American Money Printing Goes Exponential. And the chart starts in 1960. The lighter gray sloped line, that's kind of a growth curve, pretty much tied to the growth of money. So that's kind of 7% compound growth. And as you can see, compounds over 7%. Eventually it starts to go straight up. It's kind of exponential. And the black line is the Federal Reserve liabilities, or the Federal Reserve balance sheet, which really is a measure of the reserves that they put into the system, which the banks then take and lend out, and that lending is what creates growth in M2. Okay. So what you can see is that they tracked from 60 to 80, they were together, all the way up to 2000, little blip. But basically in 2008, you can see that the debt kept growing at an exponential pace. And one thing that's not on here, I kind of wish it was, is the overall level of debt in society, because the debt level in society would kind of track the exponential growth curve. And, the debt kind of got ahead of the balance sheet in 2008, and we had a panic, and boom, they printed, and you can see it went up quite a bit from, I think the Fed balance sheet was 850 pre-08, and it topped around 3.5, I think, at the top. And then, of course, Yellen and Powell tried to reduce it, and they did start reducing it, but you can see the second arrow right there, the repo COVID panic was 2019, New York repo rates blew out, went up to 10% overnight, and that was the first Powell pivot. And so Powell at that point in time basically said, hey, we can't keep tightening, we've got to loosen, in fact, we've got to do QE. And then, of course, COVID hit, and then all hell broke loose, and it went straight up. And of course, that's what created the 9% inflation peak that we had. And so he immediately, eventually he figured out, and he said it was transitory, he was wrong. I mean, that's what happens when you have a lawyer as your central banker. I mean, you can blame a lawyer for not understanding it. I mean, the one who should have understood it, Yellen. We grew, when they did this thing, basically they grew M2 by 40%. So you can't grow M2 by 40% and think you're not going to have inflation. I mean, that was just, what were they smoking? So, right. But then he started tightening again. But here, notice this. So they tightened, and they came from the peak of 9. Now the balance sheet say 6.5. Okay. But look at how the interesting point is every time the money in the system, the black line, dipped below kind of the growth in debt line, the exponential growth in debt line, a problem occurred. Well, look at where we are right now, right? So what do you think is going to happen next, right? I mean, the black line is about, and the black line is turning up. This doesn't reflect the December, change policy. So, you just know what's going to happen next, right? This black line's got to go north of $10 trillion, and it will, in my opinion. This isn't this isn't just my opinion. This is kind of a mathematical fact. I mean, they could not do it, and in which case, the debt would start to default and everything would start to collapse, and we'd have a deleveraging, cascading cycle that would look like 1929, and that would be extremely unpleasant. And if they choose to go in that direction, so be it. I'm making a strong bet that they will not choose to go in that direction, and I think it's a logical conclusion that they won't. But I suppose they could, right? That's a tail risk to the debasement trade that we're all in.
Remember, World War II was the result of the reparations Germany had to pay after World War I. Well, America and the UK are facing the same problem. They're paying reparations to the banks and the private equity groups that have stolen all the assets and replaced it with debt, right? They're off on their yacht in St. Bart's on a 300 and 400 foot yacht, but all that money came out of extraction from ongoing enterprises, leaving debt in its wake, and now nobody can pay for that. So they're going to go to war, or they're going to try to confiscate. Well, Bitcoiners are looking at this and saying, our assets can only go up in value in this scenario, and it's unconfiscatable. So on one hand, I hate to see this type of conflict coming, but on the other hand, I'm conflicted because I know that means my Bitcoin's going to $10 million a coin. The states will disintegrate because states don't have any Bitcoin, so they will disintegrate, and they'll go to war with each other. I was speaking with a gentleman last night from Pakistan, and Pakistan and India recently got into a bit of a kerfuffle, a jet fight in the air. Mm-hmm. He was saying, well, the Pakistani jets cost like 50 million, and their jets cost 250 million, and we shot down their jets, and our bombs are 50 million. And I said, let me explain to you how a Bitcoiner sees this. A Bitcoiner looks at you, two countries, going into debt to buy weapons to kill each other, which you then have to pay for by printing more money or borrowing more money. That means my Bitcoin goes higher. So, I could try to get you to buy Bitcoin and save you, but I'm conflicted, because the more you kill each other, the more my Bitcoin is worth. So, I'm conflicted. And you want me to help you, but you have to bottom out in the fiat money world. You have to bottom out on warmongering. You have to bottom out on your religious nonsense, to accept Bitcoin. If you're not going to, I don't care, because you're just going to print money to add ad nauseum to infinity, and it just means Bitcoin keeps going higher and higher. So we'll see. The solution is here for you, but if you don't want it, I don't care.